Ticketron commercial downloads in 128 kilobytes per second. There's a reason that this group puts out its instrumentals for every record.
Absolutely. So the production is great. It's really fun to listen to. It's always got a lot of energy anyway. It amps me up, whatever. And it does that.
Jock jams for social justice.
Giving this an active listen, or at least some of the tracks, and really paying attention to the detail in the production, not only will unveil some things you probably didn't pay attention to before, but I think it'll give you a good perspective for why, like, when the beat comes in 30 seconds into Talk to Me, why it feels so literally heavy.
So high now, hoping that I land on a Thai stick moving through Thailand. On the radio, heard a plane hijack. Government did that by the crook crack. I'm moving the world of conspiracies. Obey no rules, I'm doing me. Smoke kush transport to the airport.
We talked about the fact that these are their best bars, but truly, where else are you going to find an artist that says, it's almost like a throwaway for them. L comes in on a verse with,
Gray man didn't die face down in the Vietnam muscle, walking on style on you. I didn't walk uphill both ways to the booth and back to not wild on you. You think baby Jesus killed Hitler just so I'd whisper?
if this is a manifesto, Talk to Me is kind of the mission statement or the acknowledgments at the front. Here's why this book is important. Here's an overview of what you're going to learn today and why we're the best authors in the history of writing books.
It's true. It is sort of like if you had a really great book in front of you, but the author spent the introduction part of the chapter being like, I am the best to have ever written a book on this subject. If you are to find another book like this subject written by someone else, put it down. Pick up this book.
I think the thing that is true both of the production and of the lyrics, they realize the danger inherently of being quote-unquote conscious rappers, because that gets real feckless real quick. And the beats are really hard, but it's not like trap beats. It's not the same old. There's a clear negative space in everything that this record is not. And it seems to me like everything we're trying to say about it is in contrast to the other things in the landscape.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it, because it would also feel like, yeah, we've spent a lot of time describing how it doesn't feel on the nose for being angry rap. Right. And that's a great way of describing the nuance of how they work together and make an impact. Like, speaking of Thieves, there's a line in there in that same song where they have the sample from the MLK speech. They just say, fear's been law for so long that rage feels like therapy. And I think you've connected the dots between Run the Jewels and Rage Against the Machine before. And I think there's some sort of spiritual ancestry there, because that line kind of encapsulates the way that they're approaching this and why I felt it was important at the beginning to say, like, I don't think they're anarchists. There's no reason to take from what they're saying that they hate everything or think everything is stupid. They think things are really important, actually. But being able to put this kind of unadulterated rage on top of music that you're proud of feels unique. Mm-hmm. Not for better or for worse, but just different. It is a different approach than a Kendrick Lamar record. It's not quite as intended to jar you. They kind of bring you into the living room and have you sit down, and then you're going to get the lecture.
It's a little bit like Training Day when he's like, smoke this, and he's on PCP, and then it's like, all right, well, now you're in the thing. Like, now you can't go anywhere. Because, again, they know, it's like, if I don't yell, you don't listen. If I just go in this lane, with all due respect to the commons of the world, where it's like an abstract poetry slam night thing and it's going to have no impact. Like, all of this is designed, it's triangulated for maximum impact. So it's got to get a little strip clubby. It's got to contain all the multitudes that human beings do. I'm sure not overthinking that. They're just bringing their whole selves to the table, because they've tried lots of different things over the years and nothing has had the same impact as this. So it's like, well, I've done all this other stuff and it hasn't worked, so why not try this?
And I think we can see them just continuing to go. Now that they've seen that it works, not overthinking it now either. Not trying to one-up themselves. I mean, for God's sake, they just played the Super Bowl concert with the Foo Fighters.
For $250 a piece tickets.
We did not go.
It's the only Run the Jewel show in Atlanta that I've ever not been to. We were at the very first one at the Masquerade, and they came out then as they do now to We Are the Champions, which is the perfect statement of who they are, beginning with the song about the end of the game. Like, they've already won.
Anytime you spend looking into the history of the interviews from either of these guys pays off, but especially Killer Mike, who's, I think, continued to run with what's come out of Run the Jewels and allowed himself to become that cultural icon in Atlanta that Atlanta gave him permission to be. Like, he got a platform, people listen to what he has to say, and it's a great example of allowing a culture, a city, to be informed by or inspired by somebody and not necessarily have to agree with 100% of what he's saying. He clearly doesn't fit the mold of a traditional, angry, hip-hop, leftist, Southern Atlantan, on top of some of the more lewd things that he promotes on his Instagram and stuff. Like, I mean, he's also like a very loud advocate of the Second Amendment, at least as he sees it. He's been a Bernie supporter before and appears to be doing it again. Again, not to say whether that does or doesn't fit, but he's a real human being who refuses, at least it seems, he refuses to dilute himself in the name of becoming more palatable to more and more of Atlanta. And I think that choice to represent his true viewpoints and not soften them is the thing that makes him a leader for our city and somebody that we can look up to. He pushes forward. He encourages the Black community to take what is theirs rightfully, how to support one another, how to build a community, and never does so at the expense of white people, of men, of cisgendered people, any number of things, right? I just think that makes such a compelling role model and cultural icon that we can look up to.
When even the first Black president has hugely neoliberal tendencies and bad things are still happening regardless of who's in the big chair, right? It's nice to see our artists continue to be consistent and to say, nope, I want the thing that is going to do the most good for the poor, for the left out, for the people who have not been spoken for. I'm going to speak for those people, right, wrong, or indifferent. And yeah, the execution can get a little wonky sometimes, but it's always there. I think the best execution of that mission statement, but it goes back to what you said, what you read from their artist statement kind of at the beginning of the episode. You are the jewel. We began with this benediction, with this statement of hope, and we end with a reassertion of there is no one but us to do this work. Everyone has abandoned us. Everyone has forsaken us. If nobody else is going to do this work, well, damn it, I guess we're going to have to be the people to do it. We'd rather be getting stoned and going to the strip club and having a good time and living a good life. But I guess if everybody else is going to do the same thing, then we'll be the same people to do it.
Yeah, the example of that struck me was in Don't Get Captured. There's this kind of throwaway line that at least you're literally from the part of Atlanta that you and I are from, you really wouldn't latch onto.
I ain't color my brothers. In Cabbage Town, they put they white ass out. Truth been told, I'm out. Me and here.
If you're not from here, you got no idea what he's talking about. Now, I literally live on the corner of Cabbage Town and another neighborhood, right? You live one neighborhood further away from that, which in Atlanta is just like 5 blocks. Yep. Our neighborhoods are super tiny. But Killer Mike went on to talk about in an interview with Complex, he explained that line. But it's really great to hear him bring this out because it underscores the idea that he's doing the work that you're talking about. He's building communities and coalitions together. He's not just calling people out. Because he talked about, in 95, they started closing housing projects and pushed people out of the city because we had the Olympics in 96, which was like a really weird deal still. But he talked about, in 96, then the Olympics came, they pushed people out of the city who couldn't afford to live there anymore. Then they cut off bus service.
They gave them one-way Greyhound tickets, man.
Yeah.
Crazy. It's still unfathomable.
Atlanta has not done the right thing in all capital letters very often in its history. But he's talking about, they push people out and they push them to the south side of Atlanta and then cut off the connection back into the city. And he goes on to say people tend to think of gentrification in terms of race because it's presented that way. And I think it's presented that way because in poor cities, that's what's really going on. Besides that, I think that it's presented that way as a way for people who are really pushing it to make it just look like a black problem so people don't care. He goes on to talk about that this is more than color. This is about class. And to me, that was the line in the concept that underscores this theme that you're talking about, where he is really building a thing and they are building a thing together that they feel needs to be built. And it's not a matter of color. If you find yourself thinking that Run the Jewels is about race, step 1, LP is in this group. Step 2, you have a pretty fundamental misunderstanding of what they're trying to talk to you about. And Michael Render, the man, goes to great lengths to explain to people that this is not about color. This is about building an understanding of what forces are for and against you in this world and how to take back what's yours. This is about a movement that they're trying to create, and part of the reason why, again, at the beginning, I pointed out the omnidirectional middle finger thing is not an apt description. This is not an angry punk band. These are people who probably care about you as an individual. You, the listener, if you were to meet these people, you would more than likely get a kind reception, and they would really care about you and where you come from and what forces are for or against you. And you've had the privilege of meeting Killer Mike, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I bet he was pretty nice.
It was really interesting. It was at an event put on by Atlanta Influences Everything, and he was in conversation with Dr. Joyce, who teaches the hip-hop history class at Georgia Tech. In the Q&A, I was the white dude in the front row, just so excited to meet one of my heroes. And I asked, because you and I are both natives, and this place matters a lot to me, and we talk a lot about that. I asked him, how do we ensure, with the way that Atlanta is changing, that the next Michael Render comes from Atlanta Public Schools? And he just looked at me and was like, bro, it's so obvious. He didn't say that, but he just looked at me with that face, and he said, just get to know your neighbors. He knew by looking at me, you live in town, you are a gentrifier, you bought a house in a neighborhood that was not traditionally for people who look like you. Get to know your neighbors. Be part of the fabric of your neighborhood. Don't be one of those people that post something on Nextdoor, like suspicious looking person. And we had a little bit of a challenging back and forth. And then I went up to him afterward for a picture, and he was like, great question. And it shows his very real belief in the power of just dialogue. Let's get in a room and challenge each other. We may not see things exactly the same way. The conversation got a little prickly in there a few times, but one of the best things about both of those dudes is they know their perspectives, they know what they stand for, and they have enough experience and enough institutional knowledge to navigate any of those conversations. They're not relying on talking points. They have real, rich worldviews, and that comes to bear over and over again on this record. These are dudes that are not afraid to go toe-to-toe in a conversation because they know that's the only way for things to get better. We got to stop talking at each other and move through some of the stuff. This is not just the March on Washington to march. This is the 10 demands of the March on Washington. We want concrete things to happen as a result of us having made this art. Go to TuneDig.com to sign up for our emails and click the link in the email when you want to win. That's it. Kill your master.